Hi, everybody. Welcome. No, it does not. Apparently, we're starting today with a little comedy. Welcome to Authors at Google presents Ultra Sylvania. The writer and the art director of Ultra Sylvania will be speaking today about the project itself, which was done in collaboration with the Academy of Art University in San Francisco and is also a Kickstarter project. So we have two people today, the writer Brian Shermer and the co-creator and art director Jeremy Saliba. Brian Shermer has written comics and screenplays for most of his adult life, following aborted attempts as a teenager to write Indiana Jones and Star Trek novels. His first attempt at screenwriting was a handwritten adaptation of Marvel's first Micronauts comic series circa 1980. It's in a box somewhere. He is the author of the comic anthology Worlds Apart and the original graphic novel White Tower, due from Committed Comics in 2013. He has written, produced, and directed two feature films, Fools of the Game and Meeting Gray, the latter of which screened in Park City during the 2004 Sundance Film Festival. Nevertheless, pretty cool. He continues to write and teach writing for comics in San Francisco, California. Jeremy Saliba is a lover of all things nerdy and has used that passion to continue creating artwork despite the pleading from family and friends to stop. He has done artwork for various comic publications and has become a licensed Wheel of Time artist and sells art prints online. He also inflicts his twisted and self-absorbed point of view on his students at the Academy of Art. He's a movie fanatic, a bookworm, and a beer enthusiast. His imaginary friend when he was little was Princess Leia, and he will never say no if you ask him to help you move. He also hates talking in the third person. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brian Shermer and Jeremy Saliba.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Googlers, here and abroad. Yeah, I'm Brian. This is Jeremy.
Hey.
And we are behind Ultra Sylvania, as he said. We titled this presentation The Road to Ultra Sylvania because we wanted to basically show you the path that we took from initial conception all the way to even here today, because it's an ongoing project. He and I, have been working together in comics for about 5 years now. As Chris mentioned, we collaborated on an anthology called Worlds Apart, which I'm happy to say, and that doesn't come out quite right, but happy to say is actually out of print now because we sold all of them, so that's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, I write, and Jeremy's been an illustrator for ages, and
that was kind of our first foray for us into this collaborative kind of thing. We both just wanted to work on a project together, so we had the idea to. He had an idea to do several short stories and involve various artists, and he and I clicked really well right away and all that kind of stuff. And I've done a couple short stories and pitches since then. And but both of our schedules were precluding something really hugely committed in terms of like a graphic novel or anything. And then we had, well, Brian took a little trip and got some funny ideas.
Yeah, summer of 2011, I went to Europe because I hadn't been in about 20 years, and I figured I can go into debt for this. So I did, and did some traveling, blah 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 blah, and saw some amazing sights in some fantastic cities. And basically came up, I was keeping a notebook of just any ideas that would come across, like, to my opinion, any good writer should. And a couple of ones that came up and stuck had to do with the notion of what if Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster and Dracula were world leaders instead of these, creatures in the darkness and ill-fated and what have you. As I say, these were just a couple of ideas amongst a myriad of others that I jotted down, but they kind of stuck with me. As was mentioned, I think we both teach and have taught at the Academy of Art here in San Francisco. And basically what happened was I was approached by a former student who said, why don't they have a class here that we could take one of your comic scripts and make it a class where students would come in and do the artwork, basically a collaborative. And I laughed at him immediately and probably made him feel very small. As fate would have it, about 3 or 4 days went by and I still couldn't shake this notion. And I mentioned it to Jeremy, and we talked about it very briefly. And then we decided, let's go talk to the head of the illustration, the School of Illustration, Chuck Pyle, and see what he thinks. And yeah, he had some very pointed questions about our plans and what we thought we would accomplish. And we said, well, we'll do this. We'll come up with this great story, and we'll give it to the students, and they'll work on it, and we'll put it out. It'll be a web comic, and then we'll run a Kickstarter to fund the printing of it, and then we'll have it at conventions and premiere and give it to industry people, and then get it on Amazon and get it in stores. And he said, okay, that sounds good. Let's do that. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if we hit 1 or 2 of those goals, we're doing okay. This is, I forgot to put this in here. This is the original solicitation poster for the class that Jeremy put together. This is, I guess, this is probably the first initial artwork that we had of any kind, based on the script and the notes that existed at the time.
Right.
And this, so we had a very solid response from students. I should point out that it was not an open class, as it were. It wasn't something that anybody could sign up for. We were able to, we were basically given carte blanche to handpick who we wanted in the class. So students either had to submit a portfolio. In some cases, a couple of them were students we already knew, so we knew their work, we knew the quality that they would bring and the commitment.
In this case, having a working knowledge of how things are at the Academy and what facilities are available to us was a big leg up, because this, what Brian's showing you a picture of here, is the Cintiq lab at the Academy. And for anyone who may not be familiar with a Cintiq, it's a drawing tablet that is a monitor, so you just use a stylus and draw right on it. And create our digital artwork that way, primarily using Photoshop, but really any drawing program will do. And I've taught in that classroom for quite a while. I'm very familiar with the technology, and students are very excited about the technology. So we had that going for us, in that we asked Chuck, can we teach in there? And as it happens, I have a lot of experience working on those and teaching in there. So he said, sure, that sounds great. And that it helps with the students too. They get excited to have access to this kind of really high-end industry professional materials. So. That, and also having worked at the Academy for a while, we had a pretty good knowledge of the students. I had quite a few students come through my classes, and you always make note of the good ones, the competition, as I call them. And when Brian and I when this idea started crystallizing, I had a short list already going in my head of people I would ask to join us in the classroom. So that working knowledge of everything there, I think, helped speed up the process more than we thought it would go.
Yes, and to date, we've run this class twice, and each time has resulted in a volume of the story, and I don't think I've even given the basic spiel, which, beyond the original note that I jotted down, that I mentioned about them, Frankenstein and Dracula as world leaders, it evolved into this story that basically the first volume stretches throughout the entire 19th century and basically recarves the European and worldwide landscape based on something that Napoleon's forces unearthed when they were in Egypt in 1799, I believe. But it's more than that. That's really just a setting. It's a place for us to go play with these characters and have them have, real lives and deal with, as I say, political intrigues and assassination attempts
Well, even that core story, it involves a lot of fun, subgenres in comics. Alternate history is a big fun thing to play with, and when you have an alternate history, you get to kind of then mess around with the evolution of technology a little bit, which inevitably will at least touch upon steampunk kind of things, which is a very popular subgenre. And we also have the classic monster movie genre that we're playing with in there with Frankenstein and Dracula and the Mummy. So all those things all of those things are at our disposal,
and tweaking expectations. I think I don't think either one of us really huge fans of perhaps movie reinterpretations of things that have come down the pipe in recent years. Although some might deduce that that's what we're doing, it was really more not taking liberties. For example, we have rather than having Dracula have a Renfield, we give him a guy named Redford, who's an American, and basically winds up becoming known as Renfield, and I'll give a little something away here, that Bram Stoker himself is an actual character in the first volume of this story, coming to ostensibly write a biography of Dracula, and ultimately winds up writing the book that we know.
Right, right. So with all these ideas at our back, Brian wrote the script, and we brought it to the students, and they were really excited. I mean, they seemed to be overjoyed at the idea of, yeah, let's make a comic. There's a script in place written by a professional. We have another professional who's going to oversee and guide everything for us. So it was really enthusiastic and a lot of fun. I tend to kind of try to have fun when I'm teaching anyways, because that can be a pretty bland experience in some cases. But if we're doing comics, it should be fun. So it was an interesting, in-class experience. I was the official teacher, although Brian was pretty much there for every minute of the class to weigh in. When looking at artistic interpretations of the ideas in his script, a lot of times, a student will have a completely different idea than what I was thinking of. And sometimes that's a great thing, and sometimes it's a little off the rails and not what we wanted. And other times I find it to be a little bit of a draw. Those are the times when I find Brian being there to be the most valuable. He's my great tiebreaker. It's like, well, your idea is great and my idea is clearly awesome, but which one should we go with? And Brian's pretty impartial.
I sit in a throne at the very front of the classroom where we have a screen, and I will either, I'm the Roman praetor.
We need to get you a scepter.
That would be lovely. Yes. Yes. So our first, basically the first volume came to fruition, and within less than a week we launched the webcomic, which is ultrasylvania.com, and that's started in May of 2012, and we've been running 3 pages a week ever since then, and I'm very proud to say we've never missed a day.
That's right. Well, I was going to talk a little bit more about the classroom experience too. I was running it primarily as a critique session. One of the first things I mentioned to the students is we're not going to run this like a traditional class. Normally in an art class like this with students, you put the burden of finding reference on them, because that's part of the creative process that they must learn. Whereas in this case, we wanted to make as good a book as possible. So Brian did a lot of research, I did some research, and we brought it to the class and provided it for them. So already, again, they were very excited. And it's like, we get all this already, just hand it to us. And this is more of a professional environment. If we have something specific we want you to utilize to create this, we should provide that for you, or at least steer you in that direction. And so most of the class that semester was them bringing in the work and us dissecting it, going over it, looking at it. And as much as we kept it professional, obviously they're still in school, so they don't know everything. So that's kind of where the teaching element, for me at least, would come in, discussing some of the basics, like crossing the line, or general rules of layout, or the flow of the eye through a page. Digging into that kind of stuff and making sure that they understand these fundamentals, as well as pushing them to be as professional as possible. One of the other things that's kind of fun about the class for me and having Brian there is that he and I are a little bit of a yin and a yang. When it comes to subverting expectations and tweaking things in a way that people might not expect, Brian's a big fan of that. I am too, but Brian likes to go a more subtle route. With monsters, it's like, well, it's a monster, but we're going to keep them a little bit more distinguished, a little bit more, not so classic, universal, black and white Hollywood version. And I'm the pulpy guy. I'm the guy who's like, yeah, let's have him, rip up the ground and throw rocks at people if he's Frankenstein, right? Like the Hulk, right? And so Brian will typically rein me in, and I'll kind of amp him up. We kind of have a fun back and forth, trying to meet things in the middle. Not completely going overboard, but at the same time, not staying too somber.
And frequently the students themselves are the random element. More often than not, he'll have some idea and I'll temper it down, or vice versa, and then the student will come in and say, well, why don't I do this? Or they'll show us the artwork and we'll go, that's so much better than what I wrote in the script. Thank you. That's fantastic. A for the day.
And then that's having that trust. Like if you're going to collaborate with a group of people, it seems like you're going to want to, if you want them to be really involved, you want them to have an input, right? You want them to put their own stamp on things and to have a value in it, because they're part owner of the ideas, of the process of creating it, and that can create enthusiasm as well. But also, I mean, we're extremely fallible, so anyone who has any ideas, please bring them before us. We'd rather hear a bad idea and discard it than have you not bring up a good idea that would have really come in handy. And to me, that's been one of the most rewarding parts of this process, is having this really, truly open, collaborative vibe throughout the whole thing, where you know, anyone's free at any point to come up and have a suggestion, have an idea. And we make that clear right away too. If anyone has any ideas, we'd love to hear them. Sometimes students come in with crazy ideas and I get a little torn because it's like, that sounds amazing. Yes, Frankenstein should fight a bear out in the woods. That's a great idea, but it just doesn't fit in this part of the book at all. So we're gonna have to not use that. But you know, maybe a short story somewhere else where he fights a giant octopus in the ocean.
But I do always, I think in almost every script that I've ever written for him or for the students or anyone, I always preface it with, this is a blueprint. If you have a better idea for something, I trust you. You know, you are coming to this as the visual artist. I have a bit of a visual art background, but this is, you know, you are making this your career. You are making a career choice to do this stuff. And, you know, either go for it, or if you're kind of not sure if you think it's right, let's talk about it. Because I don't want to basically be coming in there and saying, no, this is what I wrote. This is what the comic will be. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, that's not fun.
No.
Yes,
Please.
Just about how much the whole script you guys have fleshed out, or just your whole timeline. Kind of.
How much of the whole script do we have fleshed out ahead of time?
Well, I'm just kind of curious more about, you seem to have these deadlines, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Sure.
Right, right. Well, he has the script done before the class starts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, we have obviously, like you noted, we have these deadlines.
Part of the beauty is that basically when a semester ends, which is when the class ends, which is when a volume ends, and then we go into that volume on the website, everything's done. So that is what has really enabled us to hit the Monday, Wednesday, Friday deadline. If I'm really fortunate and everything is, and all the artwork is done, and I've done all the lettering, theoretically I can, you know, put all that into the website, and I just sit back and wait for it to roll out every couple days, thanks to the backbone. So.
Right. The other thing, and part of this webcomic experience was another big selling point for the Academy as well as the students. And one of our big, you know, declarations at the beginning was that our goal is promotion. Our goal is to get everyone's name out there who's involved in the book. Students want that terribly. They want to make some, you know, a name for themselves in the business. And comics, while it can be a lucrative business, can also just be a passion business that you do where you're not necessarily making a lot of money. And I think you can't go into it looking to make money, or your soul will be crushed far too early and far too quickly. You have to go in to want to tell, you know, the stories that you want to tell, or make cool art, or whatever your passion on it is. So that was always the first step, and I don't know, Brian handles the webcomic side of things, but to me it seems like one of the easier steps of this whole process in terms of the outlook we had for the future of this book, with, you know, having it sell on certain websites, having a Kickstarter, all that kind of stuff. So that was the one kind of surefire thing we knew, and that we could guarantee the students, well, it's going to be a webcomic and it'll launch right after class. So it's been an integral part of everything for us, and has gotten some fun readership, and we get some fun feedback, and people, you know, leaving comments and looking for the next step, and you know, sharing their shock when something exciting happens.
And the yeah, as I said before, we knew we could do the webcomic. That was easy, all things considered. But then our next goal was, okay, well, webcomics are great, but you know, I think we're still fans of printed media. And we knew we wanted to do that. We knew it wasn't necessarily a cheap thing, but we also, of course, knew about Kickstarter. And so probably 3 months or so after the webcomic launched, we went ahead and did a campaign on Kickstarter, looking to raise just enough, basically enough money to do an offset printing of the first volume. And I don't know if you, for those who don't know about Kickstarter, it's basically a platform where you can go and raise money for an artistic endeavor. In our case, comics, but they also do, you know, film and theater and books of any kind.
Products in some cases.
Yes. Electronics.
Right.
And yeah, so you basically set a goal. In our case, we were going out for $8,500, which was going to fund the printing and the supplemental little rewards that would be given to people that would be supporters. And with Kickstarter, it's if you don't know, it's all or nothing. So we were setting a goal of $8,500. If we made it, great, there's going to be a book. If we didn't, we got nothing. and we would be very happy to continue with a webcomic. We were very pleased and surprised that it got traction almost immediately. And we certainly made our goal. We exceeded our goal. We got about 130% of what we were after, which was fantastic. And we got some lovely press along the way and support from industry professionals by way of everything from people who actually backed the book to folks who gave us shout-outs on Twitter or on their website.
It went very well. I think in the interest of really discussing the process,
Yeah.
Brian did a lot of legwork ahead of time too. He really set up connections with people, did all his networking, conventions, other things of that nature, and we're sending out PDFs, copies of the book ahead of the Kickstarter campaign, saying, hey, this is our book. This is this new thing we came up with at this class where we're teaching students to make a book and getting it out there. And what do you think? And I think laying some initial groundwork before starting something like a Kickstarter is a big part of it. Can really help your odds of success because then people are looking for it, they're ready for it. In this case, we knew a gentleman who was working for the store Things from Another World.
Yes.
And he was a big supporter of it and brought up the idea that, oh, maybe we should work together and maybe we could sell your book at our store. And we were like, oh, that sounds terrible. Yes, we'll do it. Things like that where he did a lot of legwork ahead of time were fantastic. I think the other aspect that helped the Kickstarter become successful was, again, having this little mini phalanx of students in our class. Online presences can be quite vast, especially it seems like the younger a person is, the more, the digital natives who grew up with this stuff just fly through the internet faster than my old man eyes can handle. So then they were getting the word out, and then they tell two friends, and they tell two friends. So having that core group of people together, I think really helped the visibility of it.
One of the things, though, that really surprised me and still does to this day was, as you can see, we got 367 backers. I would say only about a third of those were people that we knew, meaning we meaning Jeremy and I, meaning the students, meaning their families. So about 200 of those people, we have no idea. People from around the world were backing this thing. People in our backyard that I don't know who this person is. They live 3 blocks from me, but they're backing this book, and that was just phenomenal. That it had that kind of reach, and people seemed to want to be a part of it. And it was really rather amazing when we were done. And I'm looking at the breakdowns of where everyone's from, and we've got Brazil, Belgium, Australia, England, of course, France, most of Europe. And it was just, I'm still flabbergasted.
Clearly. I think another thing that's important to discuss, like about people who are interested in doing Kickstarter campaigns, is I've had such a positive experience with it. We did one. It got more than we asked for. It was awesome. It was wonderful. And so I just kind of, for a while there, was seeing it as this magic well of money. Yay, if you want something, go to Kickstarter. But I've since, talked to other people who've done it and people who have run Kickstarters that did not succeed. And I helped run the Kickstarter campaign, but Brian spearheaded it, and it's a full-time job. That's the one thing, it's a great place to go if you want to get, whatever, your work out there, get something published, whatever it is, your artistic endeavor is that requires some money. It's amazing, but you got to be ready because it's at least 8 hours a day.
You get out what you put into it. I have known people that have, again, done 8 or more hours a day working on their Kickstarter, and it shows, and they get results. And I've known other people that basically turn it on and walk away, and are then flummoxed, 2-3 weeks later when they have 4 backers. And you have to be realistic about it. And if you already have a full-time job, it's a second one. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But the rewards are self-evident. I mean, again, we did this and wound up with this. We wound up with a printed book that we were then able to, of course, send to all the people that supported us along with the other goodies, but then also sell. And our first sales experience was really going around to conventions and showing it to folks. Actually, I take that back. No, our first experience was this is a good, if not all, then most of the students who actually worked on Volume 1 And after the books came in, we naturally needed to send them out to the 367 people who supported us. We basically had a day where we acquired one of the rooms at the Academy and took it over. And these guys, what you're seeing here is them putting sketches in virtually all of the books that went out. And then we signed everything, packaged everything. It does not end when the Kickstarter campaign ends. You don't just suddenly get, oh, hooray, all this money is now in my account, boom, we're done. No, that's when, I don't want to say when the real work begins, but that's when the next stage of the real work begins. But then, yes, we were able to move on to conventions and selling stuff. And I went to New York. Oh, that was the other thing. So yeah, we had, again, part of our original plan was having it debut at conventions. And we were fortunate enough to have the only bi-coastal debut taking place at New York Comic Con and APE, the Alternative Press Expo here in San Francisco, which just happened to be the same weekend last year. I went to New York. Jeremy was here with some of the guys from the book, and we got some press for that, which was great. And definitely had some people come up to us at the conventions saying, oh, I backed this, or I saw this on Bleeding Cool or IO9 or any of the other sites that actually covered us. And that was, for me, that's still one of the more amazing things. It's like people coming up to me and saying, oh yeah, I recognize you from blah. And it's like, really? I live in a small apartment in San Francisco. Thank you, thank you. We managed to meet some luminaries along the way that gave us some support. And that's Dave Gibbons, who was the illustrator on Watchmen, most notably, but still big wheel in comics today. And that's me hanging with Grant Morrison, who was a kind enough gentleman.
But you mean Grant, you guys, right? G is what
oh,
you call
yeah,
it now?
we're like this. And we've since also done book signings, in-store signings here in the Bay Area, which I should definitely say that if this is something that anyone wants to do insofar as getting a book published and getting it out there, going door to door to if you're fortunate enough to live in an area that has comic shops, go to them, tell them that you're doing this thing. More often than not, they are going to be very excited and supportive of the notion of local artists, because their customers tend to be interested in that as well. We've probably done, 4 or 5 signings here in the Bay Area since last fall. Mm-hmm. And it's a wonderful time. And it's great meeting the owners of the businesses and seeing what their lives are like. And again, more often than not, they are very much in our corner.
This guy's telling me he doesn't like the book, and I'm like, what? You're dumb.
I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but
the comic shop experience it's been a really fun one, and it gives it that, I don't know, like this whole grassroots element of it is a very appealing part of the process, and it's amazing what you can do by setting off an email or picking up the phone. And I imagine this applies to things outside of comics greatly as well.
I also want to jump in and say, again, with regard to the local comic shops, we've never been turned away. Anybody that I've gone to and said, oh, hey, we've got this book, they've said, great, we want to carry it. How many, do you have any with you right now? And more than half of them have said, oh, wonderful, do you guys want to come in and do a signing? Sure, all right, well, let's do that. And we've been very fortunate with, as I say, with everyone.
Yeah. The industry is very supportive, which is nice. I think local comic shops. There's some competition with a local comic shop with digital comics and stuff now. So that's another thing that's an incentive for them to say, yeah, let's generate some interest. With the last one we did in Concord, they were doing these. We were there for their first one, if I understand correctly. They're going to do these nights, these Friday night pizza nights at their comic shop, where they have pizza and have artists or anyone involved in the industry come by and show their wares, talk about their experiences, whatever. And
in a very casual, relaxed atmosphere of a comic shop. It's not, they're not up there at a podium or a big table saying, hello, I make comics and blah, blah, blah. It's very much, hey, let's grab a slice of pizza and chat geekery. One other element that I was almost skipping over entirely was, again, we went from webcomic to, we got the book published or printed, and we were selling it, we were doing signings in stores and selling it at conventions. Our next hurdle was getting it out to broader retailers, i.e. Amazon, and again, as Jeremy mentioned, Things from Another World, which is also known as TFAW, is sort of a comics and toys and whatnot retailer up and down the west coast of the US, but they also have a web presence. And we were fortunate enough to get both books approved to be carried online, which I think was just, again, another step in the legitimacy, I guess, of the project, that most people will now see it as, oh, well, they're not just selling it for $10 and a handshake at a convention table. I can be sitting on my computer anywhere in the world and look it up, and lo and behold, there's the book. I can sell, I can buy.
It's a nice thing, when your friends say, oh, a friend of mine was asking about your book. Where is it? Where can they get it online? Just one word, Amazon, and you say you can get it there, and everyone knows exactly how to get there. Yeah.
When you guys gave it to the local retailers, do they buy it off you and then sell it for more?
When we give it to local retailers, do they buy it off us and then sell it for more, or?
Yes. Local retailers, our experience has been the base standard is they pay a wholesale of 50%. A little marketing ploy that I picked up from someone else is when they say, yeah, we'd like to buy some copies, we pay 50% of your retail. And I then turn around and say, you know what, yes, but we're gonna sell them to you for 40% of the retail. So you're getting it even cheaper than you're getting it from other people, with the nod and the incentive that they are more encouraged to sell and to promote these books because they will themselves be making more money on the back end of the sale. And no one has turned that down.
Yeah, no, we insist 50%. We haven't had that happen yet.
Not yet.
But yeah, I mean, it's been an overwhelmingly positive experience. It's a surprisingly large amount of work.
Yeah, it is not for the weak.
Going back to the students and everything, I mean, they've all been extremely enthusiastic and supportive, but there's some wrangling to do, as with any collaborative project. Someone's not holding up their end of the bargain, someone's not quite on time with something, and you've got to kind of, that was one of my heavy tasks anyways, was to get after those guys, getting them available for signings and for things. Again, most of them really excited about it, but and even some of the Kickstarter rewards that we did involved like the artists, like sketching, or there was one Kickstarter reward that we set up where it's like a night out with the creators, where we said, someone who backs us for such amount of money will get we'll take you out for comics, and go out to dinner and have drinks or whatever. And a few people bought that, and one of the artists that was really just a standout supporter and star of the book, we took him out too to celebrate and everything.
Right. I'm sorry. Right, because the only obligation that the artists have because they're students is to actually attend the class and turn in work. In truth, the semester is only 15 weeks long. Once it's over, their official obligation to it is done.
Right.
We are hopeful, from day one, that they are going to be proud of the work that they do, and that they want it to succeed and go farther and be able to do signings and get the books into the hands of the public and into the hands of industry people and basically have this calling card. Most of them, are gung-ho and do want to do that, but occasionally you get someone who's like, okay, I did some good work, I got my grade or I graduated, and it's like, so long and good luck, which, that's fine. I'm happy that that's the exception rather than the rule, of course.
Yeah. There's been a couple of students who we haven't heard from since the class ended, but that's all right.
Yeah, these things happen. So after about a year, it was about a year from the conception of the class and getting it approved to having the book come out on Amazon. And as I mentioned earlier, we had that first meeting and we were saying, yeah, we're going to have a website and we're going to do a Kickstarter and then it's going to go into print and then we're going to have it in stores and then we're going to have it on Amazon. And it was around the time that we actually got it onto Amazon that I realized we did all of those things. I guess I would have been so impressed if we had just had a webcomic and been able to point to that. But the fact that we soldiered on and people were interested and it's thrived is it's wonderful.
Yeah, I attribute a lot of that push to Brian. He's as happy as he is to get to where he got, and as happy as he would have been to just have the bare minimum. we worked together, and we've had many conversations. He's like, we gotta go, we gotta do this, we gotta push a little harder, get it out a little further. And I think that mentality is a lot of what makes it go further, what makes it more successful, what makes it complete, is that drive. It relates to obviously talking about the commitment to your Kickstarter campaign if you do something like that. Two, he had no other obligation to sit on the classes other than he wanted to be there for and have input. But he was always there and providing input and everything. He's just been a very strong presence for all that. And there's a lot of discussion about the paradigm shift these days. With I think Patton Oswalt had a great manifesto on it. But in any industry, you don't have to go to a big company anymore to get your work out there. No matter what area you're in, you can get it out there. And I think it takes talent, it takes skill, and the drive. Which it's cliche and it's a trite thing to say, but it's absolutely effective. And just getting up and saying let's go a little further, let's push a little harder every day, which is definitely Brian's tactic on all this, is what'll push it through. Emailing people that you never thought would back you, or who would spread the word to their friends or buy a comic, emailing the stores, emailing the online distributors, talking to them, telling about your book, just having no fear,
and firing those arrows into the air and just crossing your fingers. I teach a writing for comics class at the Academy, and I'm always stunned by the number of students who have no interest in Twitter whatsoever. And they don't know what it's for, they don't know what they would use it for. And I said, dude, if I didn't have Twitter and if I didn't use Twitter towards my goals, we would have accomplished nothing. For me, it was really a tool for finding industry people, befriending them either in person at first or maybe via Twitter. There are people that I've certainly met on Twitter that I've now met in real life that I now consider friends. But we got some big pushes from people like Warren Ellis and Kurt Busiek and others who we basically either we would tell them about the webcomic or we told them about the Kickstarter, and they went, that's pretty cool, and then they would spread the word, and yeah, that's invaluable in this day and age.
And that was another thing that was surprising to me, is how much the industry people themselves totally embraced it. And I would imagine that's true again for almost any industry that you're looking at. If someone sees you and sees you trying to do good work and trying to get it out there, it's amazing how supportive those industries can be. And so if you're ever trying to do anything on your own, anything in your own avenue, look to those people, and just, I don't know, like, it was this fun level of legitimacy, to use a term that we've been kind of throwing around a little bit for the last hour, is we're playing the same sandbox basically, and that's great. That's probably for me, it's the best feeling, is knowing that we're in the same area.
And now we did all of this, and we pat ourselves on the back, and then we're tasked with, we got to do it all again, and we did, and we had the second volume, the second semester. We lost a.
I got it.
Oh,
it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's his password.
Security is very tight at Google.
Basically, yeah. So we did the class again this past fall, and then the website. Thank you. Started up again. The webcomic started up again, which meant the next step was going to be going into print, and so we again returned to Kickstarter and kicked off a second volume, or a pitch for a second volume just about 2 weeks ago. And first day we had a phenomenal, I'm speechless still, response that ultimately saw us get, we were the #1 staff pick for comics within about an hour. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how all the shenanigans at Kickstarter work, the people that work there, but they do seem to genuinely love what we do. When I submitted the project, I actually got an email back from them that seemed to be personalized. If it's a bot, it's a very clever bot. Young lady saying, that welcome back, and that this looks really cool, and we're excited for you, blah, blah, blah. And as I say, after about an hour, we were #1 staff pick for comics. We were the #4 staff pick for all projects of any kind in San Francisco. And then after like 6 hours, we were on the front page. The front page, and we were on San Francisco. We were on the front page twice at the same time, which, again,
it was an awesome embrace.
Yes.
Welcome back. The second volume, to talk a little bit about that, we had basically, let's get some new students together. We did have some return students, which was actually just great because they already know everything about what we're trying to do and what we're working for. It was a little bit easier in some respects, again, to do it a second time because we had the first book to give the students. This is what we did. This is what it looked like. Please read it and check it out, and follow, hit the ground running with us. Right. So having some new students was really cool, though, to get a fresh perspective, to get some new looks, because one of the things about the book that is a challenge for me is that we have all these different artists, and I'm trying to create visually a through line through everything. So for the first one, I kept it fairly loose. We did the first couple weeks, we would do character designs and kind of agree, okay, this is what the character looks like. He has a scar right there, 2 millimeters down from his hairline. It's kind of getting some basic landmarks in place. The overall color palette of each character, getting that stuff in place. So those things would be a through line regardless of an individual artist style. And the second time through, one of the things that we'd heard about Volume 1 was that, some great people gave us some feedback and said, oh, you could get a little tighter, I think, even with those different styles. So that was a big goal for me, was to do that in Volume 2. We were really excited because the first volume, it was a bunch of guys. It was all gentlemen who joined us. But in Volume 2, we've had some ladies come and be artists, come on the book and help us, 3 of them. Which Brian and I are always, I'm married to gentlemen, and my wife is she's not a geek at all. She doesn't understand anything, the appeal to Star Wars or dragons or zombies or any of that stuff. I typically will go to her with feedback because I want that ground zero kind of feedback. And one thing she always points out that's lacking in my work initially is a woman's perspective, woman's touch, and why would I want to leave out half of the world's population when I'm trying to make something that will appeal, that will speak out to people. So having some ladies involved to me is a great boon, because then we have that. We have both sides of Earth, of the human race, contributing to this and giving their points of view. The other thing that's been kind of fun, Brian and I have been having conversations about it, is that with some students, with constraints on how many classes they have and all that kind of stuff, they want to do it again, but they don't know if they can sign up for the class again if they have room in their curriculum to do it again. And Brian and I were recently having a conversation about, is it going to be too difficult to have a student who's not enrolled in the class be part of the book? They're not going to be part of that format. We'll have to wrangle them a little harder. Brian was almost bemoaning the fact that he had so many people lining up that would want to work on the book but not take the class. And that's when I pointed out to him, so you're a writer who has a bunch of artists who want to work for you and help you make a book for free, and you're upset about that and for no initial upfront cost, and you're saying that that's a problem for you? I think that's another great thing. That's another ancillary benefit of this project and what we've done is we're creating these connections, these artists, all of which are talented, some of which phenomenally talented, and are going to probably go on to be superstars. And of course, they'll just have to remember the little people. The networking that goes on, the expansion of your professional group, it phenomenally explodes. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, when we go to signings, when we do this kind of stuff together, it's a blast. We might go out for, to a local establishment and have a beverage or two after the signings.
Public house.
Sure, thank you. And hang out with each other. And so that's, as much as we're talking about the hard work element of everything, it doesn't feel like it most of the time. It is a lot of effort, but I do that anyways. Look at that drawing. It should be better. It should be this and that. And so when I'm doing it in class, it's just doing it, something I would do anyways.
Speaking for myself, yes, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and frequently I find myself spinning a lot of plates simultaneously where, doing the website and maybe doing a Kickstarter, and then we're doing the class, and then I'm writing the next volume. And occasionally we'll find myself a bit stressed out and then realize, wait, all of these things, yeah, they might be time consuming, but I love them all, for their constituent elements, and I'm very fortunate. I see a hand.
Yeah, can we leave a little time at the end for questions?
Yes, actually, we are wrapping up. That's our last little. Thank you, Google. I'm Brian. He's Jeremy, and fire away with any. This would be the Q&A portion of the show.
Right, and really any question, nothing's out of bounds.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, what would you do differently if you redid the project?
Ooh, what would we do differently if we redid the project?
Mm-hmm.
You want to field that?
You know, there's been a few aspects of the project, and we're kind of, Volume 2 is almost in a sense doing that. So we've had that chance in a way to kind of, where I'm locking down things and being a little more stringent on what the students contribute to the book. Being more selective about who's on the book.
And having had, you know, again, at this point, we've done it, you know, we've done the entire pipeline once. So, and the entire thing was a learning experience. I'd never run a Kickstarter. I'd never submitted anything to Amazon. You know, and you know, meeting industry folks and basically going up to them cold and saying, "Hey, I'm Brian. This is my book." Blah. Now that all of that is done, there were bumps in all of those aspects along the way, and now we've corrected for that, I think. But as far as changing anything from the outset, like would we have changed any aspect of the story? Would we have done the class differently from the beginning? I don't think so.
No. It worked out. It was great. It was a lot of fun, and it worked out really well. That's probably why we went back for more.
And I want to say that I was very blessed with the fact that Jeremy agreed to be a part of this and to actually teach the class, because that's, you know, I can talk about three-point perspective and I can talk about crossing the line, but I can't. You know, the minutia of artistic critiques is way beyond me.
Well, it's a lot of fun because I get to tell people how much I hate their artwork and how it should be better. It's as long as you learn a few terms, you know, well, you should, you know, select this out and make sure that the line of sight's good here. You sound like you know what you're talking about. So, yeah.
I was curious in that the 4 frames you showed with the emperor with women saying,
Yeah.
you know, who did what and what kind of feedback did you give people
This.
to get this to change? You know?
Thank you. What kind of process, what kind of feedback did we do through the progression of everything? This is one of our returning artists, Mr. John Gomes, and this is another situation where we had the good fortune to know his strengths and weaknesses, and or if any, and we knew this was going to be a big splash page. So initially, he hadn't done anything like city street scenes before this. So I just pulled him aside and said, "Hey, you better do the perspective perfect on this. It's got to be good. You know, get reference. I'm gonna ride you like."
I'm gonna jump in real quick and say when we wrote this in the script, I not only envisioned that it was going to be in Paris, but also when I thought of it, I pictured the cover of Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And I basically took an image, which is another thing that I actually do in the script, is I will find imagery and reference online and throw it in the script.
Yeah.
So I had the album cover there, and he riffed on that beautifully. But
Right,
please
right.
continue.
So let me see. Well, I mean, you know, you can kind of see some of the progression. Like, obviously, it's a loose sketch in the beginning, anyways. So it's very malleable. You know, we can talk about things. And I thought, you know, the placement of some of the cars could use a little bit of massaging. The one on the left, especially. And I thought that the buildings, you know, there was enough of a cavernous kind of a feel. I wanted to be a little bit taller and have a little bit more of a corridor that they were in. So those were kind of my instructions. I also thought the street looked, because this was supposed to be, what was the year that this scene took place at?
Our alternate 1930, I believe.
Right, and the street looked a little too modern paved in the initial sketch. So I was like, maybe go like a cobblestone or something like that. And at which point he made those corrections. On this stage, there's some subtle small things like he was doing great. This one is just a great example. But the folds in Frankenstein's sleeves were just a little unnatural in the beginning. We had to kind of get reference, and it's one of those things where it's, you know, we'll discuss it and say, well, if you're not sure, get reference, and if you can't find the reference, let me know because I'll find you the reference. Yeah, push forward from there. From that point on, it was after we refined the sketch and got to where we wanted to be, it was the inks, and I didn't have to do much with him on the inks. He knows his inking well, and I liked what he handled with the silhouettes and how he created a higher contrast area right here with black behind the characters that were primarily bright to make that a focal point. And again, with the readjusting of these diagonal lines of perspective to lead us right to where we wanted the eye to go, it was just a matter of letting him have his fun with it and go crazy. Then with the color image, again, you know, he did a great job. We had the reference. We kind of established a palette for everything at this point already. I think I don't know if I ever had a specific conversation about the red dress with him and the color of it. but it's a great choice. It complements the green nicely, and it again reinforces that focal point. So that's kind of a typical walkthrough of the kind of things that we would talk about to make it as good as we can.
Oh, sure.
Yes, sir.
How do you figure out who worked on which panels, and did you ever have like multiple students working on the same?
Yes, we.
How did we determine who worked on which pages, and did we have people collaborating on any specific pages? Two answers, or basically two questions. We got two answers. One, like I said, this was a portfolio-driven class. We had to see what the students were capable of before we admitted them to the class. So we were able to look at that, and then usually in the first week or two, they are doing concept designs for perhaps new elements. And Jeremy and I will we will have read the script. We will sit down, knowing each person's strengths, and we'll say, well, this person might be best suited for these pages or this character, and so on. And I don't think we've ever had anyone complain.
Right.
We do occasionally get requests saying, "Oh,
right.
I definitely want to do Dracula," and where we can accommodate, we do.
Right, right. We want them to have fun. And then in collaboration, the main collaboration I can think of in Volume 1, two of our students worked on the same page. One of them penciled it, and one of them inked it, which is a common way to work in the comics field anyways. And they did a great job. It was the kiss.
But more often than not, again, because it's a class and students need to be learning all the different aspects, you've got a student doing everything. Like in this case, John did the original pencils, he did the final pencils, he did the inks, and he did the colors.
The other thing that Brian does, he caters specifically to the needs of these students in the class. And book 2, he made sure to have everyone have a consistent chunk and a run. Mm-hmm. So when they have their portfolio to present to someone, they've got a nice clean run of a story so they can show it to someone.
Right, because when we have learned from contacts in the industry that when recruiters are looking at work that students or anyone has done who is basically looking for a job as a sequential artist, they want to see pages of sequential storytelling. They don't want cover design, or just random pages here and there. They want to see that you can tell a good story straight through.
Right.
Sir.
So the Kickstarter portion, there's like a lot of stuff that seems time-consuming for you guys in Kickstarter, getting to Amazon, going to the district. So I assume that will get easier this time than not. But do you envision a future with that, where that part isn't as necessary, or there's a lot of stuff where it's self-reinforcing?
Sure. Do we envision a future where we don't need Kickstarter? Would that be a good way to Short answer, at this stage, no. Only because, as Jeremy said, it's more than a passion project, but it is not uber lucrative. Let's put it that way. The money that does come through does pay for the printing. It does pay for the shipping. It does pay for some of the, as I say, the rewards or the perks and what have you. But there isn't. We're not sitting on a big bag with a dollar sign on it that then allows us to go forward.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Google. Yay.